There is an artist whose work gets over 50 million views a day, but you've never heard of him. His account has over 45 billion total views. But he isn't a social media star, he's not an influencer. In fact, he's a 77-year-old man from Kent. The account I'm talking about isn't on YouTube or TikTok, and it isn't on one of the big social media sites like Instagram or X or Facebook. I'm talking about his Giphy account. A few years ago, I was spending nearly half my day on the messaging app Slack. Selecting exactly the right GIF to respond to a coworker was an art in its own right. And I found myself using some of these GIFs that had the same distinctive style. And there were 3 elements to this style. There's always a 3D animated figure from the recurring cast of characters, whether that be a gnome, a big-nosed nun, a teddy bear, or an anthropomorphic acorn. And they're always performing a repetitive motion, whether that be shaking their heads, clapping their hands, chattering their teeth, or in the case of the teddy bear, opening and closing its long Flasher-style trench coat. It's reminiscent of an older age of digital design when skeuomorphism dominated and app icons were all small representations of real-life objects. It's very different to the flat, minimal design that has dominated in the last decade or so. The next element is a sense of humour that sometimes combines both old and new references. At times it would remind me of bawdy British seaside postcards or the kind of jokes that my granddad would forward me in long email chains. A recent GIF shows both a panda and a teddy bear, both dressed as sailors with a skull and crossbones, sitting on top of a film frame that says, "Beauty of our women and taste of our food makes us the best sailors in the world." That could be classed as boomer humour, the kind of joke that relies on the idea that all couples secretly hate each other and that the world was a much better place before children spent all of their time on iPads instead of going outside. But then the next GIF along will be an animated Lord Kitchener calling you a Sigma, or a gang of gnomes brandishing trans pride and LGBT rainbow flags and telling you that everyone is welcome. There'll be a reference to the 2 Ronnies, immediately followed by 2 toilets with wheels driving along a snowy street with Elon Musk and Donald Trump's heads coming out of them. There's an old school appreciation of puns, there's a delightful silliness, there's teddy bears farting fire, and it's all combined with topical references and Gen Z slang. It's really unlike anything else I've seen on the modern internet. The third element is busyness. It's reminiscent of a time when all websites were custom coded in HTML, when creativity ran rampant, whether it was advisable or not, when the colour scheme was all of the colours, all of the time. It's digital maximalism. It's chaos pushing back against the order of the corporatized internet. It's all of the authenticity that social media claims to crave, but with none of the aesthetics that it idolises. Dave, the man behind these GIFs, describes himself as a 77-year-old Giga-Chad Boomer with a taste for ouzo. Despite this description, he's quite the introvert, and while he did answer my questions over email, he declined to be interviewed, saying,
"I keep well away from any kind of video conferencing. My work may be interesting, but according to my granddaughter, an old boy like me in his mid-70s, considering any sort of video activity would just be weird."
Which is why I've got a voice actor reading the replies he kindly sent over in between other tasks.
I hope this info was of some help. My wife Dot's seen me typing and asked if I was writing a novel. The past couple of days I've been in Dot's good books as I've decorated the spare room, the porch and the front door, and painted the bathroom ceiling, so I've only just got around to plonking my aching body in front of the computer. Cheers, Dave.
GIF making isn't a money spinner, and their ephemeral nature means that there's not much to be gained by ways of recognition, and the small file size and restrictive frame rate make it seem like an odd canvas for an animator to choose. So what has led a 77-year-old retiree to become such a prolific GIF maker?
In all, I've had 17 jobs in my lifetime, been married twice, and have 5 children. One of my sons from my first marriage is a multi-millionaire, though we don't speak to each other. I was originally trained in pen and ink work and have done some copper repoussé, sculpting, sketching and watercolours. But due to essential tremor in old age, I now just tend to do CAD work.
CAD stands for Computer Aided Design. Dave apparently uses a combination of 3 pretty ancient software packages to design his GIFs, and he posts them every day, if not twice a day. So I wanted to know how long each one took him.
It's a difficult question to answer because I have constructed a very good collection of 3D models that can be viewed and animated from any angle. I can also transfer components from one model to another. If I use ready-made components, a 20-frame animation can take from 5 minutes to 5 hours. If I start from scratch and have to build a new 3D model, it can take days. I have found that a GIF that sends a message, loops continuously without an end or a beginning, is not a large file size and is easily readable on a mobile phone, gets the best results. There are a few tricks to keep the file size down. For example, I have a lot of animations with 4 butterflies flying around in rows, but if I were to use only 2 butterflies, the file size would be double.
Some formats transcend digital platforms. If we didn't have YouTube or TikTok or even the entire internet, we'd still have a lot of different ways to make and watch video. Dave's putting so much time and effort into his GIF making, and it makes me wonder whether his GIFs will survive, or whether a simple change in the way that we all message each other could render them obsolete and inaccessible.
It would be nice to think that they'll be preserved for all time, but there'll always be something with a superior nature that takes preference. At one time, Flash animations were very popular. I was a content provider on Wallop, which was a Flash social media site started by Microsoft, but they've disappeared into the mists of time. I do find it sad that some brilliant animators, far better than me, don't get the recognition they deserve after spending days, sometimes weeks, creating brilliant animations, because they appeal to a very limited audience.
Who is that audience, in Dave's opinion?
There is definitely a market for the romantic animated GIF with older female web surfers. I've made many friends because of my animations, although I do avoid the numerous messages I get from Asian women asking me to tell them more about myself. I was using an amateur radio version of the internet called Packet Radio well before the internet came into existence, and it was a very friendly culture of sharing and helping each other out, unlike the aggressive attitudes you find on the internet today. I mean, I have seen the internet change drastically and not for the better. I've been accused of being racist, bigoted, homophobic, and a privileged old white male. And that's just for some of the animations I've made. It would be nice if things could return to how they were 20 years ago, but I've never seen pigs fly.
It seems strange to hear that Dave has been accused of homophobia, partly because his Giphy account contains an entire section called LGBT GIFs, and it contains GIFs such as a panda with binoculars surveying their surroundings for Lesbian Awareness Week, a trans flag-clad teddy bear ringing a bell for the Transgender Day of Remembrance, and a rainbow Dalek with the words, "We obey, we are gay." While esoteric, these messages are clearly sincere, as emphasised by a caption that Dave recently posted on Blue Sky. In the 50s, I had a gay older brother. Homophobia was considered normal. As a teenager, I hated him for being gay, but a good mother changed my attitude. Life was extremely difficult for him in those days. He was even discharged from the army for being gay. This is why I support the LGBTQ community. So, what has Dave been criticised for?
It's very funny that some of my GIFs upset people, and here are just a few examples. I made an animation quoting "women are not equal to men," which ended up saying they're better. I posted it on social media site, and a Chinese person got the right arsehole about it. I didn't remove it. With the hundreds of animations I've created, and since I'm not always politically correct, you'll always find someone who's easily offended. My rude monkey has often been classified as racist. It's one of my more popular GIFs, so he remains, but when used, I am very careful now in what context it's used. Then there's the language difference between the Brits and the Americans. I made a God Hates Fags banner copied from American placards and had a no smoking sign rotating on top of it with no smoking in church written underneath. I got a severe warning from Pinterest and they threatened to close my account over it.
GIFs are an unusual medium for self-expression, and I think I've established that Dave has a unique way of using them, so I can understand why some people might be confused. It's an unexpected way to communicate sincere ideas, whether that be support for the LGBTQ community or a GIF of a monkey popping out of a toilet holding an Israeli flag as a means of condemning the genocide in Gaza. Maybe his GIFs could be misconstrued. Perhaps Dave even gets into the odd disagreement online. But was self-expression ever supposed to be squeaky clean? If an artist brings their full self to their work, no matter what medium it is, should it ever paint the picture of an unblemished character? What I think is admirable is Dave's desire and willingness to learn. As he said in one exchange on the meaning of wokery, "When I was younger, things were so black and white and easy to understand. Fuck it, I'm going to have a smoke, a glass of ouzo, and contemplate what you have told me." Accompanied by a GIF of 3 ouzo bottles swimming around an aquarium beneath and above dual halos of what appear to be spliffs. But that's just my fairly subjective summary of Dave and his GIFs. If you've got a different opinion on GIFs, artwork, and their cultural importance, then let me know. Perhaps I will have a glass of ouzo and contemplate what you have told me.